I'm half asleep.
We'll call this meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation from Ted Martin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Please join me in prayer. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for another beautiful day in the Ozarks. Just almost a perfect day in Branson with higher temperatures and the snow melting. Father, tonight we invite you in these chambers as we discuss the business of the city, but we ask that all that business be honoring and glorifying to you. Father, tonight there's a long list of prayer requests through our city employees. Lift all those up to you, those that are sick and injured and families affected, and especially the Barnwell family tonight. Again, we thank you for the many blessings. Thank you for all our employees, especially those being recognized tonight with Tony Boer and Jason Weeks and Rick Wink and Jeremy Linger and the Parks Department, just some of the examples of great work done by all of our city staff each day. Father, we love you and praise you in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Ted. Madam Clerk, we do a roll call, please?
Denham. Here. Gaines.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Benton.
Here.
Whitus.
Here.
C. Here. Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll start off tonight with the Employee of the Month. Alderman C., would you please present the Employee of the Month for February 2022, please?
Are we going to call them up here?
Yes.
Come on
Yep.
down.
There you are.
All right. It's my privilege to announce the City of Branson's Service and Excellence Employee of the Month Award for February 2022 is going to the Parks and Recreation employees, Tony Boer, and it's Jason Weeks, Rick Wenk, and Jeremy Lininger. I'm going to butcher these names, so. This award is to recognize these employees that have gone above and beyond, and their performance exemplifies our City of Branson values. This group stepped up in a big way when the new 10,000 square foot eco-friendly trail project at Iserman Park was in jeopardy. When the contractor's plans fell through due to COVID, it looked like the project wasn't going to happen. Instead of accepting defeat, this group here took it upon themselves to learn how to do the work and get all the certifications they needed to install the trail themselves. So from cutting in the trail, installing the base rock, to mixing and lifting 42,000 pounds of porous paving material, they got the job done and they got it right. This trail is now a hub for many walkers and runners and improves the quality of life of our citizens. So on behalf of the mayor, Board of Aldermen, city administrator in the city, it's our honor to announce Tony, Jason, Rick, and Jeremy as the City of Branson's February 2022 Service and Excellence Employees of the Month.
Thank you for getting Jeff to read something.
Guys, thank you very much for that trail. I did walk it. It's nice and smooth and soft. And when they lifted the 42,000 pounds, that was at one time. Is that correct, Cindy? Yeah. I have a proclamation. Is there anybody here from the Ronald McDonald House this evening? Then I will read it from here and we will pass it along. This is a proclamation, whereas the Ronald McDonald House provides a home away from home and comfort for families and children who must travel away from their home for medical care. And whereas the Ronald McDonald House Charities of the Ozarks, located in Springfield, Missouri, has enabled their guests to maintain close contact with their seriously ill children by providing a secure, supportive environment at minimum or no cost at all if the guest cannot afford it. And whereas through generous donations of citizens, the Ronald McDonald House Charities of the Ozarks have served the needs of 790 Taney County families, 354 of which were residents of Branson, Missouri. And whereas nearly 69 McDonald's restaurants and various other businesses in the Ozarks will display paper hearts which have been signed and adopted by citizens donating $1, $5, $20, or $20 for the 29th annual Share a Heart campaign, the number one source of funding for the Ronald McDonald House. And whereas the McDonald's restaurants of Branson are participating in the Share a Heart campaign, which will continue through the month of February 2022. And now, therefore, I, Larry Milton, Mayor of the City of Branson, Missouri, do hereby proclaim the week of February 14th through the 20th, 2022, as Ronald McDonald House of the Week. So,
Excellent.
now it's time for our public comment. Lisa, do we have any speakers signed up?
Yes, we do. Our first speaker is Gary Groman, 350 South Wildwood, Branson, speaking on apple pie motherhood and waving the flag.
And fishing.
Apple pie.
And fishing. Oh,
And I'm too shaky to wait anymore.
Thank you, Parks Department.
I will apologize. Normally, I have time to prepare a little bit more, but I had to decide at the last minute to come tonight. My choice was either be here or my wife wanted me to watch another rerun of a Hallmark movie, and I just couldn't stand that. I'm sorry, guys.
you're a good man, Gary.
Recently, I had the pleasure of writing a news article entitled, "New City Department Provides One-Stop Shopping for Branson Businesses and Developers." The new department, the Community Development Department, replaces the old Planning and Development Department, performing its functions as well as a multitude of additional operations with the stated goal of providing Branson businesses and developers with a one-stop shop service. Now, who can argue with that? Isn't that truly like motherhood, apple pie, and waving the flag? John Manning, the Assistant City Administrator and Director of the new department, said, "We're taking the city's Open for Business program and turning it into a department where you will have ideally a one-stop shop for business development, relicensing, et cetera, all the time, not just on Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock, but all week long." Fully support that, fully support the general idea of the department. To do this, the Community Development Department absorbs assets from various city departments into the new department. John said that the new organization at a transitional stage will not cost the city more money and will serve Branson's existing businesses as well as new businesses and development. For existing businesses, the biggest impact will be increased efficiency for those having to come to the city to get business licenses, re-inspections, or permits for the business. For new businesses coming to Branson, it will provide right off the bat a one-stop shop for helping them all on the way to getting the business up and running from scratch. Based on the information I had received, I wrote the who, what, why, where, when, and how of a news article of the interview. I'm particularly interested in how the actions of City Hall impacts on Branson's existing citizens and businesses, which is truly why I come here and speak on the few occasions that I do. This is, in my opinion, a major change. This new department is, in my opinion, a major change not only for Branson's existing businesses and the future development of Branson, but the consolidation of an awful lot of power in one place. After gathering information on the participation in the development of the department, so far, my plan was to do a follow-up story on how Branson's elected officials felt about the development of the new department and what future benefits they saw Branson's residents and existing businesses getting from it. I typically start by going back through agendas for study sessions and Aldermen meetings. I could find no evidence that my elected officials had any major input in the development of the new Community Development Department thus far. Accordingly, my purpose in speaking to you this evening is to ask that you take a more active role in the future development of this department as it proceeds through the rest of its transitional stage to ensure that the end result is in fact a department that serves Branson's existing residents in a more efficient and effective manner. Thank you. If you got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Gary, thank you for speaking, and thank you for writing your article last Saturday. Had the opportunity to read that. The board, my understanding is the board wasn't involved with the creation of this department. In fact, I don't know if any board members were included in any of that, setting that process up. So I'm anxious to be educated on what changes have been made at the city, and I'll be happy to report back to you on how it is set up and the future of how it goes.
I'm really not asking for a report. I'm just asking you as individual members to be more involved as it's in a transitional stage. My understanding is it was effective in early January. It's in the process of developing and in a transitional stage, but my purpose is to ask you to be more involved in the transitional stage than it appears you've been up to now.
Okay. Any comments? Thank you, Gary. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just, I mean, I didn't hear about it till after the fact. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So I'd be anxious to learn more about it as well. Okay.
Thanks, Gary. Madam Clerk? Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to comment. I didn't know about the change until last week at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and a presentation was made, and as far as being a part of it or knowing what the makeup was or how it was going to take place, I'm interested in learning more about it as well.
So, yeah. John, maybe we could get a presentation, or Stan, we can get a presentation to the board of what changes have been made?
I'll have John set that up with you all. It's like I discussed with you in our two-on-one meetings when I said that we were going to make changes with the Planning and Development Department that we'd planned on doing a little later. But when Joel left us, we had the opportunity to consolidate and bring every department, the biggest thing that I've heard from the board over the last several years, and I really find it really odd that you wouldn't find it somewhere in one of their study sessions, is the fact that the city has been less than appealing, shall I say, to for our community on how hard it is to build here. And that's been one of the goals that the board has given us, is to make it more developer-friendly as far as getting the process through where everybody is on the same page. So I don't have the fire department approving plans or the planning development department approving plans, and then finding out after the construction starts that one side of the table wasn't aware of what the other side of the table had approved. And so that's why we're moving it forward and getting it done. Be happy to let John discuss it, give you all a presentation. Hopefully, it's just odd to me that some of you all don't remember that. But anyway, we're going to move forward, and I'll have John take care of it.
Well, I totally agree with the decision. I mean, one of the things that I've heard more than anything since I've been elected is the permit process, how difficult it was to get, permits to put up a wall or this and this and that. So I think it's a great move. I'm not saying that at all. So.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Our next speaker is Cherry Webster, 118 Country Bluff Drive, speaking on Bill 5782 annexation at 3855 Fall Creek Road.
Good evening. Anniversaries are appropriate times to reflect on what has happened and then to look ahead at what might be accomplished. Today is the second anniversary of the first reading of the annexation of 3855 Fall Creek Road. What actions have been observed over the last 24 months? Overall, it's been repeated circumvention and hiding of established procedures, ordinances, statutes, and public oversight. Specifically, the developer refused to leave the required 50-foot undisturbed vegetated buffer along Country Bluff, which was the condition of the initial zoning. He circumvented installing stormwater detention measures, hid it from his engineer, who later documented the fact in his letter to the DNR. He refused to construct the engineer-designed 4,000 cubic yard stormwater basin. The county refused to issue a stop work order until the developer updated the SWIP from 10 acres to 52 acres, and then refused to require the developer to construct the pond designed in the revised SWIP. While all of this was going on under the county land disturbance permit, the city alderman facilitated the developer's efforts and kept him out of the city limits for 3 months so as to complete the land destruction process before the second reading, thereby allowing the developer to circumvent the city's design standards and criteria for storm drainage facilities. 2 months after annexation, the city attorney advised the alderman to ignore city ordinance, state statute, and case law, thus circumventing established zoning procedures, and instead facilitating a zoning by way of annexation plan of intent. The city administrator, in conjunction with the alderman, circumvented the public oversight process by waiving building permit fees behind closed-door meetings versus BOA public hearings. What has all this circumventing and hiding yielded to date? Country Bluff was left to fend for itself when the city and the county chose to represent the developer over the neighborhood. Country Bluff was left with a 30-foot, not a 50-foot required undisturbed vegetative buffer. We're still waiting on the 4,000 cubic yard detention pond, and lots 35 and 34 continue to be used for detention. What does the developer have to show for his actions? No low-income housing project on the site, no MHDC construction funding, no future CDBG disaster recovery funding, no water connections, no left turn lanes on Fall Creek Road, no sewer upgrade for 130 feet of a 6-inch line to an 8-inch line. Why? Because no easement from the appropriate Country Bluff resident. No sewer connection until before the end of May, and then only a limited capacity. The county has seen the parcel rezoned from 50 acres agriculture to 10 acres neighborhood commercial and 40 acres MDR, but the real estate taxes only increased from $312 to $326. The city has no low-income housing project on the site, but has received lots of scrutiny over having chosen to represent the developer's interests over the neighborhood's interests. After 2 years, why is there nothing to show at this time? Because one person, Dan Ruda, the landowner and developer, refused to honor the conditional zoning and leave a 50-foot undisturbed buffer. He refused to construct the engineer's appropriately sized detention pond. His attorneys manipulated the somewhat ambiguously worded but understood meaning of the annexation sentence in city code to circumvent the codified zoning process. And then the $7 million in free construction money through MHDC wasn't enough for the developer. He wanted another $38,000 in waived building permit fees. What if the developer had just followed the rules from day one? What if the city alderman had stood up to the county or asked the DNR for help to protect the neighborhood during the annexation process? Could it have been a win-win for everybody? What might be accomplished next? In the last couple of weeks, the developer has indicated to the county he wants to build 200 homes and he wants the left turn lanes along the frontage. Country Bluff also hears from the city that Ruta is working on a plan that should make folks happy on the stormwater issues.
30 seconds.
That remains to be seen. Until the annexation section of the city code is updated, all these actions observed over the last 2 years can continue to be repeated in the future. At this time, Country Bluff would like to reiterate what we have been asking for all along: Basin Buffer Annexation Code. At the very least, construct the 4,000 cubic yard pond on Ruta's property at 3855 Country Bluff, Fall Creek Road.
Time.
No more detention on the 2 Country Bluff lots. Compensate for the over 20,000 square feet of trees removed from 20 feet of the 50-foot buffer in the form of a berm along Country Bluff, from pavement to bluff, flattened on top with evergreen trees to create a year-round opaque buffer. Update the City Code 94-34 annexation to better clarify procedures and prevent this fiasco from happening again. Mayor Milton, the city aldermen and the city leadership have been part of the problem to the long-missing buffer and basin and the prevention of a repeat of these unproductive and detrimental actions. It is time to be part of the solution. To whom do we direct these requests for correction?
To whom do you direct those questions? Well, you're directing it to the mayor and this board. As you know, we've been provided legal counsel. Stan, would you like to chime in?
I'm not sure where our 2 attorneys are. There they are. I believe that they are currently understand that there is, the issue is simply at this time, there is no legal foundation to make Mr. Ruda do anything. Mr. Ruda has not pulled a building permit for down there, and that's why, no, there was never any building permit fees waived down there, because there was never a building permit fee pulled. Once that occurs, then there are things that Mr. Ruda would have to do. As far as the retention pond, I have tried to stay in contact with Mr. Ruda as much as possible on that topic. I have been told that he does have a design, and I know that the city has expressed interest in maybe actually making that pond even larger to help support the neighborhood down there. I can't tell you when that's going to happen because, quite frankly, we are not in charge of getting that done. So that's where I believe it is at this time.
Well, I do know, or I think I know, if there was any alderman or the mayor who lived in Country Bluff that was affected by this stormwater for the last period of time, 2 years, I would have to believe we would be saying the same thing you're saying.
True.
And so your legitimate question is, why is this not being addressed? So we're told legally we don't have a basis to stand on to force Mr. Ruda to do anything because of the way the codes are set up, right? He has to do certain things once he pulls a building permit. I don't know what's going to happen with your request, and I know you've asked several times of the buffering that, as it was annexed in with the 50-foot buffering, it was annexed in with the, with the detention pond going in with the construction. So how can I sit here and continue to look at you every time you bring this topic up in good conscience and not do anything? That's your question.
Right. Because every time we come, all we hear is, well, we can't do anything. It isn't our fault. It all happened in the county. You guys all sound like a bunch of 12-year-olds. You know, you could have picked up the phone and called somebody down at the county and said, hey, look, we've got a developer who's got a land disturbance permit in the county and with the DNR, and he hasn't put a single erosion control measure around the creek, and we're sending the MS4 coordinator down to do sediment control testing to send off to the DNR every time it rains. Can't you guys do something? You know, you could have done that. You could have called the DNR. The DNR rep told me that the communities call them all the time. Help us. They tried. They were the only entity that was able to accomplish anything. And that was because the developer violated 8 Missouri clean water laws. But their focus was sediment-filled stormwater, not sediment-free stormwater, but the sediment basin that the engineer designed was to be converted to the stormwater detention basin. And when it rains, I have a handout for you tonight. And when it rains, and this handout includes the overall stormwater detention plan that the engineer designed when the DNR requested it be revised. Picture this. You have a 52-acre rectangular piece of ground. You've got the bluff going down to Lake Taneycomo on one side, Fall Creek on another. You've got the woodlands with the Nevins Forest in between on the west side. All 3 of those sides slope down in to the survey pen between Lot 34 and Lot 35. What's the slope? Well, first of all, let's do a point of reference. Say you're on Main Street coming down to the meeting tonight. You've got Shake and Steak at 5th Street on your left. You've got the Carmos Building on your right. And from 5th Street to 3rd Street, steep grade, 11.4% grade. Now let's go back to 3855. From the bluff, half of it closest to Country Bluff is 19.1% grade. A little closer to the west side, it's 14.4% grade. Come down from the pavement, it's 14%, 13%, and 10%. Come over from the woodland side, it's 7.9%. What developer in their right mind would think that with all that water funneling down into Lot 34 and 35 could get by without putting in the 4,000 cubic yard detention pond that is engineer designed? Dan Ruda. And all we heard was, can't do anything, can't do anything. All
Jared,
happened in the county.
Jared, do you serve on the board of the Country Bluff Association?
I do not.
Is anybody else from your neighborhood here that serves on that board?
Not tonight.
Okay. So the Lot 34, Lot 35 you keep referencing, that's next to your house, right?
I own Lot 34, and you cannot use Lot 35 for detention without also using about a third
So
of
Lot 35 is
34.
next to your house.
No, I'm at Lot 33 with the house. 34 is basically my side yard, and then it drops down into the same elevation as Lot 35, which is vacant.
When the water, as you say, floods, how many houses are affected by that?
It's actually the house across the street. When it floods, the culvert on Lot 35 overflows, the street overflows, and 2 weeks after the annexation in 2020...
So, hang on. My question was, how many houses are affected by it?
2 houses on the other side of the culvert.
Okay, how many houses are in Country Bluff total?
106.
Are you aware, as any of your neighbors, or you explored a private cause of action for stormwater runoff?
We have, are you talking about civil action? Mm-hmm. We have considered and discussed civil action. We know that our initial grievance, as Attorney Liebeck says, is with the developer. I just showed you what the county and the city managed to do to facilitate the developer's efforts. If we were to take legal action, it wouldn't just be against the developer. It would be against the county and the city.
Ms. Webster, I've been hearing it for a year. I'm fully aware of
We've been
where you
trying
think your
to
legal
approach
position
you
is.
with some logic and some specifics.
Here's my question, though, because I have friends that live in Country Bluff, and I know full well this doesn't affect them. And I've not seen your board here. In fact, the last time board members were here, they resigned that same weekend, I think, or a few days after they were here. So you keep saying we and Country Bluff and us, and I think our city attorney has told you before, stormwater runoff is a private issue, private cause of action, private civil action between whomever that's affecting and the developer.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems to me, and I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it because you keep coming and bringing these same things up. You want the city to litigate your issue or your couple of neighbors' issue. You want that to be the city's problem. You want us to openly cause an issue with the developer that also opens the door for litigation. I mean, do you not understand we're in a no-win position on this?
No, I'm not asking you to create a litigation situation, unlike what you did. This Board of Aldermen, in facilitating Dan Ruta's efforts last year to circumvent the processes, created the situation where we need to be looking at whether or not we need to sue you or him or both.
But again, and I've said this before, you're drawing conclusions. You're drawing legal conclusions about what may or may not have happened, and no court has come to that conclusion?
Excuse me. All I have to do is look out my window. I watched.
I'm not denying that you have stormwater on your property. I'm just saying you're drawing legal conclusions that what the city did is illegal, or that we've circumvented some process. You're here.
I'm saying you facilitated it. You greatly facilitated it. Let me give you a really simple
Mr. Mayor, I would advise that this is public comment, and we're moving way off the beaten path. I believe our attorneys would advise that as well.
Could I add one thing? If Mr. Ruta plans on putting 200 houses in, he's going to have to get some kind of permits. I assume he's going to have some sort of storm detention. Can the city address, at the very least, this stormwater plan that his engineer designed 2 years ago? That's one thing.
Stan, am I correct in responding, saying that when Dan Ruta pulls a building permit, that the stormwater detention issues for the property must be addressed?
Absolutely, that is correct. Once the trigger in the system is the pulling of that building permit.
Chris, did you want to add something?
I was just going to point out that this isn't on the agenda tonight. You're risking violating sunshine.
Can we have a mic, please?
I'll repeat what he said. What he said was, we need to discontinue this because we're potentially violating sunshine because this topic that we're discussing was not on the agenda. Correct. Thank you, Chris.
Here's another issue. How are we supposed to address this? We call behind the scenes and we get nowhere, so we try and take advantage
Sherry?
of a public forum, and now you want to shut us down with the sunshine law. It's like, I mean.
Mayor, I think Chris gave us some wise advice.
Yeah.
I really did.
Sherry, I apologize,
Protect both of
but
us.
Thank you for listening, sir.
legal advice is we don't want to cross over into violations.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're not going to hear any more public comments. Just kidding. Lisa, do we have any more? Nope, that's it. Next is the consent agenda. Are there any items that any members of the audience would like to have moved down from the consent agenda to ask any additional questions or make comments? Any items from the board? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please read the items on the consent agenda?
Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Aldermen minutes for the January 20th, 2022 special meeting and January 25th, 2022 regular meeting. Acknowledge receipt of Finance Committee minutes for for the December 3rd, 2021 regular meeting and the January 13th, 2022 regular meeting. Acknowledge receipt of advisory board minutes for the November 16th, 2021 meeting. Final reading of Bill Number 6125, an ordinance approve the intergovernmental cooperative agreement between Taney County and the City of Branson pertaining to use of the Taney County Firearms Range and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6126, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Ewing Signal Construction LLC for traffic signal maintenance, repair services, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Your Honor, that concludes the reading of the consent agenda. The floor is open for a motion approving all items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please vote on the consent agenda.
The motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the next item is a resolution recognizing K-9 Tygo for his loyal service to the police department and approving the transfer of ownership to his handler. The floor is open for a motion adopting the resolution.
Looking for a motion and a second. We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from our honorable chief.
Mayor and members of the board, this is a resolution to recognize Tygo, one of our 2 police canines, for his service, and then authorize his transfer from the city of Branson to his handler. Tygo is a 7-year-old Belgian Malinois that has faithfully and loyally served the city for the past 6 years. Recently, Tygo was diagnosed with a terminal health condition, which has required us to remove him from police service. As things go in the police canine world, there's a bond built between that canine and the handler. Typically, we have 2 options when it's time to retire that dog. One is euthanization, and the other is transfer that canine to the handler for the remainder of that canine's life. That's the resolution that we're asking for approval tonight. There would be a $1 transfer to purchase that dog from the city. The handler would assume all liability and medical expenses for that dog moving forward, and then we're in the process of replacing Tygo at this point. So we request approval of the resolution, available for any questions that you may have.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, any Board of Aldermen?
Chief, is Tygo out of service now, or when does that take?
He is. I pulled him down probably 3-4 weeks ago on the veterinarian's recommendation.
So when, do you know when a replacement is coming, or has that already happened, or?
So we have plans to send Officer Gamble to Alabama in March for a 9-week instructor-trainer school, and there he will acquire a new dog imported from overseas and train up the new dog and come back as an instructor for the canine program that we've adopted.
Awesome. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you very much. Thank you very much for how the canines are treated. Thank you to Officer Gamble for his commitment. Dogs are my favorite kind of people. I love them, so thank you.
So you talk, and I appreciate those comments, and we'll share them with you, with him. You talk about the commitment. That's a full-time job, because that dog, you spend more time with that dog than you typically do your spouse and your family. And it's a 24/7 operation with that dog. So, thank you.
Chief, I'm just so glad that he was able to take this dog on and he wasn't euthanized.
Right.
You know, he deserves more respect than that. So thanks for going down that direction, and thank him for wanting to take it on.
We will. Thank you.
And from the video of his last day, it looks like he needs to go to Andy's at least once a week. So.
That was the first time that dog had had anything other than the issued dog food, sir.
Yeah, I got a chance. I was at the penning ceremony where he was officially retired, and it was really neat to see the slideshow that was presented, and just to see that bond with his handler, and those pictures were just really cool. I know my kids that at various things throughout the community, various events. I think at the last Bonanza event, in fact, they were there. And so I know my kids always appreciated seeing them out. And so it's great that he's taken him in. I think that's awesome, and glad to see their end result be what it is in light of the circumstances. So thank you, Chief, and to all your folks down there.
Thank you for those comments. You mentioned the retirement ceremony in the slideshow. One of the slides we posted up there was Bat Tygo, where Gamble had put a Batman mask on Tygo. That was, and I say was, our highest ranking social media post with over 53,000 engagements. His last call that we posted on social media 2 weeks ago, we rounded 530,000 engagements.
People really do care.
Yeah. Any other comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carries 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6127, an ordinance accepting the proposal of federal signal safety and security systems for the purchase and installation of 2 outdoor warning sirens and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6127.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Ted Martin.
Mayor, members of the board, the Fire Department's Emergency Management Division seeks the approval to purchase 2 outdoor warning sirens to replace existing equipment. These siren units are located at Parnell Drive and Dr. Good Drive. Both siren units are approximately 38 years old, with increasing difficulty in finding replacement parts as the model is no longer supported by the vendor. In short, I scavenge old units to keep other units going. Funding for this project comes from the State Emergency Management Agency's Emergency Management Performance Grant, called the EMPG, the mini grant providing up to $50,000 this year for projects within certain project guidance. Outdoor warning siren units are allowable purchases. The fire department applied for this grant and was notified in mid-December that the grant request was awarded. Funding for the mini grant is 100%, requiring no cost share from the city. Using the resources of the Kansas City Regional Purchasing Cooperative Agreement, we're able to secure a bid price of $49,679.02 for both siren units, digital controllers, batteries, new utility poles to support them, and the removal of the existing equipment and all installation. Staff recommends the purchase of 2 new outdoor warning siren units from Federal Signal Safety and Security Systems. That work will be done by Blue Valley Public Safety located in Kansas City. And I would ask, this does have a timestamp to it to be done by mid-April. We have to get the items ordered, built, constructed on the East Coast, shipped back here and installed by mid-April. So I would ask for you to consider a dual read tonight. This is the same program we did last year, same format all the way through.
But the cost went up.
I'm sorry?
Just kidding.
No.
Is there any comments or questions from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carries 6-0.
I will entertain a motion to approve a second reading for this item.
Mr. Mayor, I make the motion that we go ahead and do a second read for this because of the timing and, well, it's coming from the East Coast. We know how long it takes to get stuff from the East Coast, so let's get her done.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion, and a second, to hear a second read. Please vote.
One moment. Who made the second? I'm sorry. Thank you. I just want to make sure we're. That motion carried 6-0.
Okay, Madam Clerk, would you read this item for the second reading, please?
Your Honor, this is the final reading of Bill Number 6127, an ordinance accepting the proposal of federal signal safety and security systems for the purchase and installation of 2 outdoor warning sirens, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the final reading of Bill Number 6127.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the audience? Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 6-0.
Thank you, Ted.
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6128, an ordinance approving an agreement for professional consultant services with Roselle Engineering Company for design services for the Elevate Branson Community Improvement Project and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6128.
Motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Keith.
Mayor, members of the board, this project here, excuse me, is for the Elevate Branson Community Village Project out off of Gretna Road there. I'll try to summarize this. April the 21st, or 2021, city applied for block grant development funds on behalf of the Elevate Community Village. The project includes construction of public infrastructure, roads, water, sanitary sewer, stormwater, and detention basins of an affordable housing development. Let's see, qualifications were requested for engineering services for the public improvements of Elevate Community Village in September 2nd of 21. 6 qualifications were received and were all reviewed. The Elevate team recommended Roselle to the Finance Committee on their December the 3rd, 21st meeting. Finance Committee agreed with the recommendation of staff and recommended staff negotiate a contract with Roselle Engineering for the design service. Staff recommends award of the agreement for professional service, consulting service to Roselle Engineering in the amount of not to exceed of $125,000. Staff recommends approval. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I need to remove myself due to a conflict of interest on this matter.
Any questions or comments from the audience?
Brian Stallings, 137B Lake Hills Drive. Board, Mayor, my only thing is I'd love to have a dual reading tonight, just from a time standpoint. We'd love to get this project going. I'm waiting, I've got some grants pending that I'd love to move forward on, so even 2 weeks helps me out. So if we could do a dual reading tonight, that would be fantastic. That's my only comment.
We'll see if it passes the first time. Any other questions, comments from the audience? Questions, comments from the board?
Yes, sir. Keith, what's the source of funds here?
CDBG funds.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0.
I would entertain a motion, if it's desired from a member of the board, to approve a second reading on this item.
Mayor, I would make the recommendation that we have a second reading of Bill Number 6128, an ordinance approving an agreement for professional consulting services with Roselle Engineering for design services for the Elevate Branson Community Improvement Project.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion.
I'm sorry, I hit the button. I have like multiple seconds. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to approve a second reading. Any questions, comments from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0.
So we have an approval for a second reading. Madam Clerk, would you read this item for the final approval, please?
Your Honor, this is the final reading of Bill Number 6128, an ordinance approving an agreement for professional consultant services with Roselle Engineering Company for design services for the Elevate Branson Community Improvement Project and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the final reading of Bill Number 6128.
Motion is second. Any comments from the audience? Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0.
You bet.
Your Honor, next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6129, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Delorado LLC for replacement of pool grading materials for the Aquaplex and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6129.
We have a motion and a second.
It's funny.
Gonna look weird.
Well, we have a motion and a second.
She's quick, Ruth. There we go.
Now she's not even up there. In the spirit of saving time, we'll move on. We'll get a staff report from Cindy.
You guys had some kind of funny picture up there, some of the pool. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, one qualified bid was received on January 5th, 2022 for the purchase of pool grading materials. The qualified bid was from Delorado LLC. The grading system that surrounds the Branson Aquaplex is in need of replacement due to cracking and deterioration caused by heavy usage and exposure to the elements. The grate system is 770 linear feet long with an average width of 13.75 inches. The typical lifespan for a pool grate is approximately 10 to 15 years. And as of 2022, the grate system at the Aquaplex is 17 years old. In the past several years, we have replaced multiple sections of the grate because of brittleness and breakage. The current grate system is no longer manufactured, and we cannot find replacement pieces to make necessary repairs. Staff recommends the bid award to Delorado LLC in the amount of $33,739.15. The bid meets city specifications and funds are budgeted in the 2022 capital improvements project budget. Staff approves, staff suggests what staff recommends. There we go.
Approval.
How about recommends approval of the bill? I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members in the audience? Questions or comments from the board?
Yes, sir. Is this a total replacement?
Yes.
It's not remanufacturing of anything to fit. It's just out with the old, in with the new.
So this system is really interesting that Delorado makes because it's actually a patent system and it allows the system, the replacement to fit with the curvature of the pool. So it makes a product that will work on straightaways and curves because if you look at our pool, it's round. And so its pieces are flexible and will bend left and right. So this is actually, I think it's why we only got one bid, but it's really a good price. We had talked to gotten other quotes before this, and other manufacturers would have to come on site and measure and do blueprints. So this is a really good system, and I think a good price, but it will replace the whole thing because our current system isn't manufactured anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Did our 4 employees of the month take a look at this and see if they could get it right, or no? Just
Jim Cartwright can fix almost anything, so I would be surprised if they didn't try to rig something up, but it's time to replace it.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote. Cindy, do you want a second reading on this?
That motion, I'm sorry, Miss. We've got one missing. There you go. That motion carried 6-0. Your next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6130, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with the Branson Lakes Area Chamber of Commerce and Convention and Visitors Bureau for tourism and marketing services, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of bill number 6130.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Jamie.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is the first of two renewals for the Chamber and the CVB contract in the amount of $1,946,818, and this does coincide with the approved budget that we have in the tourism fund as related to that. The term is April 1, 2022 through March 31st of 2023. Staff does recommend approval of this. Thank you.
Do we have any questions or comments from members of the audience? And here he comes.
Good evening, Jason Altman, President, Branson Lakes Chamber and CVB, 4100 Gretna Road. At first, I just want to thank those that attended our membership meeting today. Thank you for your presence. It was a great meeting.
Thank you for the pie that you served today. It was wonderful.
It was better than the couscous, but we won't get. So anyway, so I want to thank you all for the relationship that we have and the trust that the city has in awarding to our organization to help market this entire region, specifically the city of Branson. 21 was an amazing year. Set records across the board from tourism tax collections. We're estimating, when research is completed, that we've brought in an extra 1 million visitors into the market through 21. We are being cautiously optimistic for 22 based on everything that occurred. But, we believe that with our relationship and the growth that we've had as an organization with the city of Branson, that we'll be able to really take the dollars that you award us and really increase inside the boundaries what the city's looking to accomplish. So I'm looking forward to future meetings. Hopefully you all think we're doing a good job with the money, and looking forward. I'm going to ask for a second reading since everybody else is. So, if you want to get that out of, you're shaking your head, Stan, come on. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for the relationship, and hopefully it's continued.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? Hearing none. Questions, comments from the board? I have one question that I would like to bring up. Looking at big picture, I know we've had numerous meetings focusing on how do we generate revenues. We really need to generate revenues because of our budgeting issues. I'm going to ask this board for their opinion to change. We don't have this on the screen, do we? The contract? I should have asked earlier, sorry. While Chad's looking that up, under paragraph 13, I'm going to read the first sentence. It says approval rights. The parties agree that the city, through the contract administrator, in its sole discretion, shall review and have final approval of all marketing budgets, creative and media plans, promotion, public relations, publicity, and marketing presentations, and research as required by this contract. What I'm going to ask this board is, and I'm going to read the first part again and tell you what I'm looking to insert. The parties agree that the city, through the contract administrator, comma, it says, in its sole discretion. I would like to consider changing in its sole discretion to read with board approval. And I'm mentioning that for a couple reasons. Nothing against Stan, but I don't know if this is in Stan's wheelhouse.
I don't think Stan is the contract administrator.
Oh, who is the contract administrator?
That would be a good question.
I thought you were, Stan.
It's under 22. You go to 22.
22.
Oh, there I am. I guess I am. Now I know.
Okay, so I would like to remove the "in the sole discretion" and replace that with the words "with board approval." And the reason I'm bringing that up is I believe that there's members on this board that have quite an extensive marketing experience in Branson. And if there's going to be any changes to the contract, instead of the city, I know that says it there, but this says, you think that doesn't circumvent that paragraph, does it? Looks like paragraph 13 stands on its own. So I just think it would be healthy for the Board of Aldermen to be involved with reviewing and having final approval of all marketing budgets, creative and media plans, promotion, public relations, publicity and marketing presentations, and research as required by this contract. Any comments from the board?
Could you elaborate on what would it they'd be bringing approval for specific things, or what do you, I mean?
It says approval for those items. So it's approval for the marketing budget. So when they prepare a marketing budget, creative and media plans, promotion, public relations, publicity and marketing presentations, and research. So,
That we would have input on it.
yes.
Mayor, could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Just for my understanding, under the Section 22 Contract Administration, on 22.3, it says the representative of the city with Board of Aldermen approval and the representative of the contractor shall have the primary responsibility and authority on behalf of their respective parties. And so the 22.1, .2, and .3, doesn't that all roll up under 22 Contract Administration? So wouldn't that already be included? I'm really just asking a question just because I read it and I was just needing clarity. Yes. So I just was wondering if any of the attorneys could help, because that's what I was reading, but I could be totally mistaken on that.
Well, here comes Chris.
Dun, 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 dun.
That'll be in the show this year.
Yeah, baby.
Good afternoon, or I guess it's
Evening
evening.
now.
Wow. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Just want to clarify something. It sounds like we're trying to make an amendment to the underlying contract. What's before the board right now is a contract renewal that has already been executed by the chamber on the other side. If Chad could scroll all the way up to the top, please. Or all right. This is what's before the board right now, is a contract, or basically a renewal. So if the mayor or any members of the board desire change, I would ask that you vote this down, and we will bring it back before you with the appropriate changes. But again, to further emphasize what Director Roush said, she is accurate. The board ultimately has final say in how this contract is worded.
So Chris,
does that
so Chris,
22
just for clarity, yeah.
Yeah, does the 22.3, does that revert back to that? I mean,
Correct.
okay.
Well, then if 23, I'm sorry, which was it, 22.3? So that paragraph references that the city administrator with the board approval. So you're saying that that paragraph supersedes or overrules what's written in 13? I don't want to get this into legal. Chris, if you're saying that for a city administrator or a contract administrator to make any changes requires board approval, I'm good with that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, he can't alter the terms of this contract without your approval. All that Mr. Dobbins is authorized to do is administer the terms of the contract. That's just simple language, contract administrator. So any substantive changes that would be required under the terms of this contract would obviously have to come back before this board.
Very nice. It's good enough for me.
Wait a minute, do I get a vote?
Forget it.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 6-0. Your Honor, next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6131, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Hood and Associates, CPAs, PC, formerly Cochran Head, Vick and Company, PC, for auditing services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6131.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Jamie.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This is the, basically the second renewal for our auditors to audit the 2021 fiscal year. There was an initial term and then 4 renewals, and we are on our second, so this would be the 3rd year that they've audited with us. Staff does recommend approval of this. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from members in the audience? Questions, comments from the board?
Yes, sir. Continuity of cost as far as the contract goes, at the same rate?
Yes, it's $54,950. It is within the budget, and I believe that they increase 3% on an annual basis. They are a very low cost in comparison to the others when we went out to bid a couple of years ago.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Jimmy, as we enter this process, I don't know if Bill was involved, but when we do the interviewing, I'm not sure the proper auditing terms.
The fraud interviews that the auditors come in and do with the board?
Okay.
Or the city
Entrance and exit
administration?
interviews?
The entrance and exit interviews?
Well, yeah, they do, they pick a couple of city leaders, and they typically do the city attorney. They also typically do one of the city administrators and a couple from the board to do like fraud interviews. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? And that, you said that was the same price last year, just a 3% increase?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, let's vote.
Better than the increased price of gas, isn't it?
Yeah, 3% is pretty cheap. Jamie, do you want a second read? We're on a roll tonight.
That motion carried 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6132, an ordinance amending the adopted 2022 budget for the city of Branson to adjust monies in various funds to increase wages for all employees, a 4% increase for a full-time employees to include administration, directors, and assistant directors, and a 7% for all other full-time city employees. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6132.
We have a motion. The second's trying to come.
Somebody
It's
just,
not lighting up.
There he is. Cody, that was you?
it's there.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Jamie.
Thank you, and Mayor, members of the board. We had this discussion at the Finance Committee, and they approved to bring this request before you all. The essential idea behind it is we are in a time where inflation rate for 2021 was 7%. We ended, and the cost of all of our goods is going skyrocketing, and I don't think anybody could challenge that. And so what we wanted to do, per the request from the city administrator, is look at what we could do for our employees to help them maintain and keep up with the rising costs of everything. So the request was at 7% for all of our full-time employees and 4% for essentially directors and city administration. Knowing that we have some challenges with our operating budget and looking at the balancing and all of that, we did discuss that in our surrounding areas, we are seeing municipalities and box stores and retails and all of businesses out there are looking to up the cost and up the wages for their staffing. And so in an effort to keep up and stay competitive, we are trying to do what we can for the purpose of our staff. So I presented today the general fund and the fund balance. It would definitely, the money would have to come out of the fund balance for this year, and then we would have to really stay on top and looking for a viable option to offset these costs. But as of today, we do have to take care of our staff, and we all have agreed that they are our number one priority. So that's why we're bringing that request before you tonight. And I do want to let you know that these numbers that we put together, they were a projection based on a point in time. So they are subject to change slightly up or down. And so those will be reflected in the financials if you choose to approve this tonight. Thank you.
This was also recommend approval from the Finance Committee.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Any questions, comments from the audience? Questions, comments from the board?
Jamie, does that, when it says all, is that all departments? I mean, every department, police, fire, everything? Right?
Yes, that is correct. And on the budget amendment side, we broke it down by fund and showed you how much by fund was going to come out of the fund balance. So that includes everyone that is full-time employed by the city of Branson.
Right, and the 4% would go to administrator, directors, all the heads of departments?
The higher level,
And
yes.
then everybody under that would get a 7%?
Yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
I just want to make sure I
Yes, sir.
understood it correctly. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
The question goes back to what we did last year, and you stated we would have to redo it this year, which I believe was the CARES Act, one-time stipend. This does not include that.
This does
No.
not, that's correct.
Just
This
wanted to
would be
make
a
sure that was
cost of
clear.
living increase that would increase the wages for employees in order to keep them able to
Well, the people
buy
that
just
are-
groceries and those kind of things.
The people that are
essentially.
watching would need to know that.
Thank
Because
you.
it was a discussion that we had last year, and I
Certainly.
appreciate you
Yes.
clarifying that.
Well, you also can't afford people looking elsewhere.
That is correct.
Because replacing them is almost impossible.
Absolutely.
We also mentioned in the Finance Department that this 7% is really what Jamie said, and that is to cover the cost of inflation, right? The employer is not going to put an extra penny in their pocket at the end of the day. So Alderman Skanes, your point is that stipend is planned to be an actual increase. We also discussed that the stipend and what we're getting ready to vote on tonight, those are stopgap measures, right? We're just putting a Band-Aid on this. This is a temporary solution. Knowing that we're determined to take care of our employees, we mentioned in that Finance Committee meeting that we set a date for June, I believe, to say, we're doing this temporarily. We know the stipend is a one-time, temporary, so before we get too far into the year, in June, we'll have our staffing study done. Hi, Jan.
He's right there.
Oh, hey. We'll have our staffing study done, and we'll be able to analyze all of this to make more educated decisions. But the Finance Committee was very committed to take action on this and take action promptly.
Yes, yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, let's vote.
Does this increase our $10 per meeting to 20? Just trying.
Chad, I'm frozen.
Microsoft Circle of Death.
Take a
Yeah.
roll call
Please,
vote.
just take a vote.
Roll call vote.
Just all in favor?
Oh, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it.
Thank you. Your Honor, next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6133, an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Section 353 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to competitive bidding required exceptions. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6133.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the audience? I thought Cindy was going to comment. I was waiting on Cindy. Hearing none, any questions, comments from the board?
Staff report.
Oh,
Would you like for me to do a staff report?
you know what? Let's do that, and then we can ask questions.
Sure. Well, it's important to do the staff report because I wanted you to see that this was a combined effort of several departments trying to mitigate a problem that, once again, increasing costs and inflation has created within our city. This is a modification to Section 2-353 of the Branson Municipal Code, and this is basically our competitive bidding requirements. And so I asked Cindy and Keith to come down today too to give you examples and about why we took this on. And we have not changed this code. We haven't made revisions to this code since 2009. And so what this will do is this will increase the director's authority for purchasing approvals to 20,000 from 10, and then the city administrator authority for purchasing approvals up to 50,000 through a written formal contract. And this will increase the threshold for the sealed competitive bids to 50,000. And so I asked Cindy and Keith and some of them to come up and give explanations as to why this is needed for the city of Branson.
And Jamie, just for clarity, it's increasing to 50 from, what is it currently?
15.
15,000
Yes,
to
sir.
50,000, okay. Okay, Cindy.
So I asked Jamie if I could come and just speak in support of this. I think I actually kind of got this kicked off, and I think, yes, we can definitely, Keith, Kendall, and I are having this issue. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jamie, I don't think you mentioned that the current revision, is based on Republic's.
Yes.
But what's happening with us is the vendors, due to volatility in the market and due to supply chain issues, just will not hold any kind of contracted pricing. They will not commit to anything, and so we're having, just a really difficult time with that. So by raising the thresholds, it would allow us not to, have to. We would certainly still get the 3 pricing, but not have to commit, to some of the contracts that we're doing that they're not able to commit to. One of the examples I have is food for resale. That's a big problem with us that we still haven't worked out. As some of you who have probably concessions, you can probably relate to this. Mayor, you've got your food. Another big one, toilet paper. So I think we can all agree we want toilet paper, right? And so that's a big problem that no one will lock in pricing for that. And janitorial supplies, pool chemicals are a problem. All of these are pretty low, and would these changes would be a big help to us. Yeah, I think the others have examples too, but timeliness also. So it does take a while to go out to bid on these, write contracts, bring them to the board, have a double read, all those kind of things. So by the time that has happened, some of the contracts aren't good anymore. I just had that happen. So a couple months ago, I came to you all and asked for a contract for agricultural supplies. That is things like fertilizers, Roundup, that kind of thing. So we just signed that. And they've already notified me they can't hold their pricing. And so the glyphosate, sounds like something Kendall would say, has gone up. That is 93% Roundup in the granular, and the liquid is gone up 152%. Field marking paint has gone up 17%. This kind of speaks to what Jamie was saying. The inflation, the code hasn't been modified since 2009, so we all know inflation's gone up a lot in 2009. So the thresholds just really aren't, need to be modified. So I think that was, I just wanted to come and speak to support of that. I mean, I can tell you, working with the finance department, working with Jamie, working with Ryan Hill, the purchasing agent, and Chris has been very, very open and supportive of this. And so those are kind of my examples. I'm sure Keith and Kendall can speak to examples too if you want them to, so.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Come on, Keith.
Well, I'm not quite as wordy as Cindy is. You've probably noticed before.
We'll just let that sit there.
No offense, Cindy. But in just our operating contracts, I have approximately 15 operating contracts. It just keeps our departments and our city rolling day-to-day, operations. And 9 of those would not have to come through city council approval then. It's just our normal operating expenses that we have year to year, same old thing every year. And, I can read a few of them here. Sign shop supplies, our concrete, asphalt, uniforms, signal maintenance contract, excuse me, overhead door, our salt, road salt, which we've went through quite a bit of it the last few days, guardrail, elevator maintenance, let's see, electrical. There's 9 out of that 15 that we would not have to bog down the council approval with and stuff, so. Anyway.
Thank you.
And one other additional item to note is all of those things that he read, just keep in mind the initial approval comes through the budget process too. So you're seeing that, and then these changes, and then everything they talked about. It was just a great need that we wanted to bring before you, especially before the summer got up and running, so that we could help make that difference.
Sounds like the times we're in, and we need to keep up with the changes. Any questions, comments from the audience? Questions, comments from the board?
Yes, sir, I have a couple of them.
Sure.
Consistency with GAAP, consistency with auditing procedures, because we're raising the threshold up quite a bit. You'd be still utilizing the same systems and procedures for approval, disapproval as you have before. Only thing you're changing is the threshold, you're just raising it.
The only thing that we were changing, and we did that for a specific reason, is really the dollar values, and the wording didn't change very much. And so the dollar values was specifically to keep up with the rising costs and everything that was going on. And yes, we did take a lot of our cues from another city that is growing quite big, Republic, and so we're inconsistent with them. Some of the other cities, sure.
You think this will pass muster with the auditor? Have you had discussion with
Oh,
him?
yeah.
Do you feel comfortable?
Oh, yes. I mean, the auditor is going to look at what you all approve, as long as it's within the ramifications of the state and what you all approve, they're going to look at that. So yes, yes, sir, I do.
Okay, thank you.
And I can concur with this group, what they're saying, because we're seeing the same things in the private sector. We're having to do this too, so.
Any other comments? Hearing none, let's vote.
Alderman Whitus,
He hadn't learned to use it yet.
not to call you out, but I'm not, are you registered?
I am green on my little thing here.
Okay, are we voting yes?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, if y'all wanted to do a double here, I mean, you can.
We could
That
scrap,
motion carried 6-0.
we could scrap the next meeting, just do all doubles tonight.
Whatever you want. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Jamie.
Mr. Mayor, on this next issue, I have to excuse myself because I do have a relative involved with it, so I'll go to the other room.
See you, Bill.
See, it's the last item, so just keep on walking, Bill.
Keep on. Come get your good stuff.
Your Honor, the next item is appointments. This appointment process is in accordance with the Board and Committee Appointments Procedure for Category 5, appointments made by the mayor with approval by the Board of Aldermen. Mayor, please announce your slate of appointments to be voted on.
The appointments to the Historic Downtown Branson CID Board with the terms expiring April 2026 is Jim Babcock, Mary Bowman, and Kyle Junk. And those recommendations were made. I received a communication from the CID Board, and these members are currently on the board, and they voted unanimously to ask them to for us to keep them on the board. And so I'm simply following their lead unless I hear something different from the board.
The board would be voting on a slate of appointments. Are there any aldermen requesting an appointment be pulled from the slate to be voted on individually? The floor is open for a motion to approve the slate of appointments for Category 5 as presented.
Received a motion and a second. Any discussion? Let's vote.
That motion carried 5-0. They'll be appointed. Thank you.
And I would like to publicly thank those three for their willingness to serve. It's much appreciated. Moving on to reports, we'll start with Alderman Denham.
I have nothing, thank you.
Alderman Skanes has not come back. Did he really just leave? Oh, there you go.
There were no ribs in the other room, Mayor.
Is that your report?
No, I have a report to give you from the Graham Clark Airport Board.
Oh.
Their revenues were significantly up. They saw a huge increase in the amount of activity and income over 1 year from $415,000 to $539,000.
Wow.
And it was pretty substantially in fuel and leases. They're doing very, very well over there. They have gotten some grants to pay for the Scully system. This is interesting. It's a backup turn-off device for making sure you don't overflow your fuel going into airplanes or in the truck itself. They've been approved for $150,000 for a new fuel truck, which is older, Mayor, than you and I put together over there, and $75,000 worth of hangar repairs. They state here on February 26th, there's an MPA meeting coming in, the USPA fly-in on May 19th to the 22nd, the Sport Air Racing League on August 26th and 29th, and they're expecting a significant increase after Mr. Morris does his PBRs down there. I'm not talking about drinking the PBR, bull riding.
Yeah.
I'd like to address it, but if we could, and that's something we've been talking about income, and it's about the internet sales tax. We did have a good discussion, you remember, you and I, Clay, with Senator Moon's office and Brian Seitz. But there are other states out there that are dealing with this just a little bit better. As an example, the sales tax revenue is collected at the state level. It's not collected down at the local level. So Walmart doesn't have to cut 150 checks. They cut one check electronically to the state, and the state turns around and reallocates that money down pro rata based on what your local tax rate is, which seems to be the smart way to do it. In fact, in where I grew up in Arkansas, the major companies came to them and said, this is a better idea. I hope we can present this to our legislatures and they bite off on it, because it's really killing the municipalities, the counties, the cities, the towns in the state of Missouri, and not being able to collect that revenue. So that's my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Alderman Fenton, we would have ended on time, but Bill Skanes came back.
Ribs.
Alderman Cooper, what you got?
I would just like to compliment Keith and his department and the road crews. I don't know, I can't speak all over town, but for my subdivision, man, they were on it like stink on you know what, man. I mean, they were out there salting and scraping, and they just everywhere I looked around town, they did a really fine job, and I know that wasn't an easy task because that was a lot of snow and ice in a short time. So kudos to y'all.
They wound up in my front yard twice. I just remind you of that.
Keith, I hope everybody in your department knows how much the citizens really appreciated what you did. And I'm going to go on to say that our police and fire, they really went up above and beyond the call of duty. They helped numerous vehicles that were stuck. I know we had some buses that were stuck. But hats off to police and fire. And Keith, please let your whole department know that the community really appreciates that.
Yep.
Alderman Fenton.
Chris, I believe this is your last week, if I remember correctly, right? So mine's not so much a report. I prepared a very lengthy speech, so if you'll humor me for probably the next 30 minutes or so.
No.
I actually have nothing prepared, so I'll just wing it. But you ask anybody in my profession, and they'll tell you it's often stressful, rarely fun, right? But always somebody's mad at you. It doesn't matter what you do specifically. It seems like somebody's always upset with you. I just want to say thank you. I was down here a couple years ago, and you guys and some of you sitting up here were faced with something that unprecedented, something that none of us ever thought we'd go through, and some tough decisions were made, and I know some upset people, right? Like I said, somebody's always upset. So I wish you luck in your future endeavors, and I've said this a lot in the last year that I've been up here, and I'm not envious. With all due respect to you, I'm not envious of what you had to go through and some of the decisions you had to make. You know, we are asked to make decisions on the fly, and so often there's not a black or white answer, right? We make the best decision we can with the information we have, with the knowledge we have, and I think you did that in a professional and ethical way, and I don't think anybody can hold that against you. So for me personally, I just I want to say thank you, and thank you for your service to our city and what you have done for our community. Again, I just appreciate you and wish you luck. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Alderman Whitus.
A few of us attended the chamber luncheon today, and I just want to reiterate that, and Jason stated earlier too, 21, we had some great numbers overall. And just want you to realize 21 was probably an anomaly, and everybody hopes to just match 21 with what they do in 22. And so it is going to be, we've got our work ahead of us in several different ways, but there's lots of great new things on the horizon, new things coming to town, new things happening. So just know that the future is still bright.
Thank you. Alderman C.
Not a whole lot left on the bone here when you get down here, but I just there's nothing that I can't say that everybody up here already said. I mean, it covers it all. Me and Alderman Skanes had a blocked driveway. It was taken care of immediately. We got great run on Facebook from it. The city did. But yes, and Chris, thank you so much for what you've done for us here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, reiterate exactly. They didn't clean my
Yeah,
parking
let's
lot
clear
off.
that up. Our phone will ring off the hook. You didn't clear Alderman Skanes' driveway, correct?
No. I did it with a shovel.
Administrator Dobbins.
No report, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
I agree with a lot of the comments that were made up here. Chris, I think you did a very good job with the city. I know everybody up here wishes you well. I just want to remind everybody that as we're making our financial decisions, I'm determined to focus on increasing revenues. And when we have some of these conversations, it's often mentioned we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And it's easy to say the words, we're going to have to make some tough decisions. But for example, tonight, taking care of our employees, that 4%, 7% increase is $1 million, right? So we need to generate the revenues. Other than that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Thirds.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor? Oh, I guess we're voting.
Yay.
Thank you for everybody coming out tonight.